I'm going to call the meeting to order. Do we have the roll call, please?
Here.
Mr. Kerrigan. Ms. Cooney. Here. Mr. Curtis. Mr. DeVold. Mr. Dortch.
Here.
Mr. Finland. Mr. Hall. Mr. Hawkins.
Here.
Mr. Humke. Mr. Tretton.
Here.
Ms. Weber. Here. Ms. Zadra.
Thank you. Mr. Trenton, would you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda. I did have a request to move item N up, so we'll do item N right after public comment. Any other changes? Can I get a motion for approval of the agenda?
Motion to approve as amended. Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Public comment. Do we have any public comment? Thank you. So we'll move on to item N. Brian.
Good morning, all. You have in front of you in your board packet some information, and then this morning we passed out some additional information as it relates to the bond scenarios. The information that we passed out this morning relates to a question raised from Mr. Hall in terms of the cost of doing the transaction and the total cost and savings that was not included. I apologize for that, but it is in front of you for all four scenarios. We also have John Sherman from Washoe County and Scott Nash and John Peterson, our financial advisors from J&A Consulting. I'm going to ask those folks to come and sit up here as we run through this, if they wouldn't mind. And with that, you have four scenarios in your packet. There's one. Okay. Sorry about that. We started this process actually about a year and a half ago when rates were very favorable in terms of doing a refunding. Got to the point where there was no benefit to do it about 2 months ago due to where the rates were sitting. Now it's back to being in the positive. We've run through probably 15 or 20 different scenarios to get to this point and kind of narrowed it down to scenarios 1 and 2 in terms of what staff was looking at in discussions with Washoe County and our financial advisors. And then at the board meeting, or finance committee meeting this month, we were asked to look at extending the debt to a 25 and 30-year term. So those are scenarios 3 and 4 in the packet. I guess the major points to each scenario. Scenario 1 takes the debt service we're at right now and looks at refunding it basically in its current status. So it would take the savings from lower rates and just impact that in the current year. Scenario 2 looks at extending the term, essentially three years to get to a fixed debt service payment right around $9.8 million. Scenario 3 bumps it out to 25 years, which lowers the debt service requirements to $9.2 million, and the 30-year scenario would drop it to $8.7 million. With that said, the 25 and 30-year scenarios, the information that was passed out this morning, would result in net losses on the transaction of 30 and 62 million, respectively. That's largely due to stretching the term out. You have a longer payment window. Right now, the debt that we currently have outstanding would be paid off July 1, 2029. This would push them out into 2035, 36, and 2042. So anytime you stretch your payments, your total payments are going to go up. In walking through this with Washoe County, if we were to look at refunding the debt, and Mr. Sherman can speak to this as well, we've discussed at the staff level the request to add a sinking fund to the debt service scenario, in that any revenues from a room tax perspective over 22 million, and we're currently at right around 20 million in the budget and in the outlook year, 10% of that for the first 2 years would go into a sinking fund. The next 2 years, it would kick up to 20%, and the 2 years after that and beyond, it would go up to 30% going forward. Once those last 3 years of debt service that would be added in the $9.8 million scenario to get to level debt service, which would end up being paid off in 2032, once the sinking fund had enough money in it to pay those off, the sinking fund restrictions would be eliminated, and we wouldn't have to put any additional funds into that sinking fund. With that, I know that's a lot of information. I'm going to let John Sherman comment for a moment.
Excuse me, just real quick, Mr. Chairman. Does everybody understand that, you know, each year is part of our budget? You know, this year we're going to pay $9,700,000. What we were looking to do, and as you'll see as we move up in years, this year that's $500,000 more that we're paying this year in this year's budget. That's a $500,000 bump. In 2016, as you can tell, we're looking at another $700,000, $800,000 bump. The two scenarios, and as you can see, when we get down actually to 2024, we actually have a little over $2 million bump. What we were looking to do, as Brian was laying out, were two scenarios just to try to level the debt service payment out at around the 9.8 through the lifetime of the bonds, so that we would not be experiencing these bumps as we move forward, or these increases which come directly out of our operations. And then the thought was, well, if we extend 3 years to get us to 9.8, where we no longer have to look at an increase, what if we extended it 7 years for a new 30? Would that actually free up additional working capital for us to work with? So what we're actually trying to look at now is one of two things: either doing something to level out the debt service payment, or do something that would actually free up additional cash. And that's what we originally, all of our debt that we have now is on the convention center. And if I'm not mistaken, and maybe Brian, you or Mr. DeVold could speak to this, when we refinance, we're at a 10-year level. We're at a 10-year. We've been paying on these notes 10 years. We're only allowed to refinance one time. So if we take a vote to refinance today, for the lifetime of these payments, we're not allowed to refinance again. Is that correct? So that's a couple of things we're looking at different scenarios, but we really only have one shot. So that's the other thing that I think we all ought to keep in mind as we look at this schedule. Yes, ma'am.
But Board of County Commissioners also have to approve whatever is.
Absolutely. Any action we take today, if we do take any action today, would then have to go before the Washoe County Commission and be approved by them as well. Washoe County Commission does hold the note for us, even though all the payments come from a hotel occupancy tax. That's our first pledge for all the revenue that we do generate goes to pay off our debt service. But Washoe County does hold the note, if you will, for our debt.
Yeah, these are general obligation county bonds that are issued.
So anyway, I want to give you just a brief idea of what we're looking at here.
And if I may too, the RSCVA as a standalone credit entity couldn't sell debt because their credit rating isn't sufficient, and that's why it has to go to the county to get the county's credit backstop, if you will, or general obligation pledge. That way, the RSCVA then can piggyback on our credit rating, which right now is AA. So even the original convention center bonds and their refinancing in 2001 were both debt backed by the full faith and credit of Washoe County, and that's hence why the County Commission has to approve any refinancing. And just one of the things that we're looking at is to why you would want to go to level debt service, and I think Mr. Kelly pointed out astutely that you're going to be chasing an ever-increasing annual debt payment requirement. And when we did the math on what increase in revenue it would take annually to cover that increase in debt over the period through 2030, it was a little bit more than 3% compounded annually to everything else being equal to be able to make that annual debt service. So that's a fairly significant revenue growth trend, particularly given the last decade. So that was one of the reasons why we put that, in our discussion, is that it makes sense to, reset now, and then you're not going to be chasing that ever-increasing debt load. The reason for the sinking fund is that if we do extend the term of the debt, and that's necessary to make it level debt service at the 9.8 level, that extends the period of time the county's at risk. And so when we got into discussions with the RSCVA staff, we recognized that, the RSCVA has some needs going forward, that they would like to be able to have access to growth in revenue for operating purposes, particularly sales and marketing, and I assume operations of some of your facilities. But the county, because it's extended the period under which the county's at risk, that we would like to have some proportionate share in that increased revenue. And under the scenario we looked at, that Brian mentioned, the 10, 20, and 30% carve out over a period of years, that one scenario would have it in the not too distant future, that carve out would allow us to call the debt in the last 3 years, the 3 years extended, because there's going to be a call feature in the debt, so we can just prepay that without a penalty, and then at that point in time, the RSCVA will have the benefit of all the increase in revenue.
A question on the sinking fund. I understand why you're asking for it, but don't we already have a big pot of money that we have set aside when we originally did this, that's to help guarantee any shortfalls, that kind of thing?
There's $4.6 million in a revenue stabilization fund currently.
So help me understand why we need a sinking fund in addition to that.
Again, because of the extension of the time period. You're adding 3 years of additional debt. And I would also point out that revenue stabilization fund can be applied against the last debt payments that the RSCVA has.
Mr. Chairman, if it's okay, we did have the opportunity to meet with Mr. DeVold, the chairman of our finance committee. And it looked, because there are, in addition to this, there are a number of fees associated and other expenses that I think that possibly Mr. DeVold could explain better than I. So Mr. DeVold, maybe if you could go forward with a little bit on this, with your thoughts on the different scenarios.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission. We did. We spent quite a bit of time, and I think we took Mr. Sherman's recommendations to heart, and I appreciate his position. I think just as kind of a background, kind of one of the things I thought was, hey, we're stretching this thing out for 3 years. Would it make sense to go to a 25-year amortization or a 30-year amortization and fix it long term, in my view, and then try and create a situation where we had significantly more dollars for marketing the organization rather than paying debt service. So basically, we kind of went down that road, and some of those scenarios are laid out here, and basically the payoff to me wasn't big enough to stretch it out to 25 or 30 years. Plus, we'd have to do some arm twisting with the county commissioners and Mr. Sherman, because I understand their concerns also. So what we did is we went back to the 22-year proposal and said, okay, well, let's look at this. What does this really do for us at the end of the day? The payment schedule kind of evens out over a 4 or a 5 year period, but it doesn't really help us short term. It doesn't help us in the next 3 to 5 years significantly as that refinance sits today. So I thought, okay, well, that's really not accomplishing what we wanted to do. It's fixing something long term, but it's not really fixing anything short term. And as Brian has already told you, we've got one bullet in our gun here, guys. You can do this one time. We weren't significantly decreasing our interest rate, in my opinion, and we weren't significantly decreasing our payment exposure that we had going forward. So I'm sitting there thinking, is this really the right time to do this? At the end of the day, we're going to spend about $2 million to get this refunding put together. We're going to spend a lot of staff time and energy on that. We're going to have an additional sinking fund in addition to the $4.5 million that we already have, and we're really not improving our lie at the end of the day. So I think, you know, there's like 5 or 6 strikes, and you know, you're out. In my personal opinion, I just don't see the value of doing this at this time, from my perspective, just because I'm not seeing any real value to the organization in the next 3 to 5 years, and that's kind of where I'm landing on this. So anyway, I'd love to hear other comments. The people that I know, Jerry was
Yeah,
at that
and
meeting, and Dwight.
Yeah, I mean, and when we went back through this, and really it came down to what is the benefit, and really is now the right time. We only get one chance to do this. Do we really need to do it now? And I think that's what it came down to, and that's what Jim and I kind of talked about. You know, when you look at you know, we're okay for the next 3 years, and really you got about a $500,000 jump after that for several years after that. You know, so we're really not in horrible position over the next several years, and there might be a better opportunity to do this down the road, and we're throwing that away if we do it now. So that was our thoughts. Other comments?
What's the next occasion that we could look at this?
Anytime.
again? Anytime.
Yeah, it could be at any time. We could gear it up again next year if we wanted to, depending on the interest rate environment.
You know, and that's kind of a good question. You know, historically, sitting presidents try to drive down interest rates, you know, to try and get reelected. So I'm kind of hoping that historical phenomenon reoccurs, but you know, you just never know. I mean, the market is pretty crazy right now and volatile, but you know, we may continue to look at this, and like I say, I think, you know, we don't have a lockout window right now, Brian, so I think we can continue to kind of rate shop would be my recommendation until we really find something that really fits our needs long term. But you know, just on a short term basis, you know, I'm not getting more dollars to the marketing department. That was really kind of my ultimate hope from this thing, you know, with a lower debt service payment, and that's just not materializing in my view to a strong enough degree to really say, okay, for the next 22 years we've shot the one bullet in our gun, and I just don't think that's the responsible thing to do in my opinion.
And to be honest, I mean, I really had heartburn over the sinking fund. I mean, the fact that they're telling us we've got to put money aside, if we have increases in revenues, that we've got to take those increases in revenues and put those aside to cover debt service. You know, right now, all of our revenues are pledged to debt service. So that's the first thing we have to pay. So to actually set aside a sinking fund on top of that, to me, was you know, unrealistic in my opinion. I don't think we need those increase in revenues to handle operations. And you know, if we have other decreases in revenues, again, our revenues are pledged to cover our debt service. So there's really no risk to the county. Yet they want this sinking fund on the side. So I had some real heartburn over that too.
If I could comment, my name is Scott Nash with J&A Consulting Group, and we're an advisor on bond offerings for RSCVA. And just kind of a technical point on the ability to call this into the future. When you do a bond issue, you can do what's called an advance refunding, and you have one opportunity to do an advance refunding. And your bonds were originally issued, I think, in early 2000, and they were refunded in 2001 for interest savings. The term was not stretched or anything at that time. And because you did that refunding, you could not refund them again until what we refer to them as being currently callable, until the call provision on the 2001 bonds, it can be exercised. And that is what we've kind of been waiting for, is for that call provision to be available. And that becomes available July 1 of this year. And federal tax law permits you to refund these bonds at any time on or after July 1, or within 90 days before, which is why we're kind of back, because we knew we kind of had to wait around for this time. Going forward, because this is a refunding, we still have one shot to do what's called an advance refunding, but you can do a current refunding, meaning that if the call provision on the bonds, you were to say you issued bonds now and you had a 10-year call provision, during the first 10 years you would not be able to call them, but after the 10 years you could. So just to kind of clarify, you're not locked out for 22 years or something like that. You would be locked out for a period of time. Now, if we were able to get an 8-year call period on the upcoming bonds, then you would be locked out for 8 years, so to speak. So just wanted to provide a kind of a technical point on that. A couple of other points just to mention quickly. Brian mentioned going through 15 or so variations. I think he was being conservative there. We probably have done more, but there is some flexibility on how the bonds can be structured, and we had kind of multiple goals we were trying to achieve. One of which, as was mentioned, was kind of levelizing your debt because of, I won't go into the details, but your debt ascends basically right now. And the thought here was maybe we could fix that now by levelizing it so that you don't have in future years have to come up with increasing debt payments. And so that was a thought going into it. Also a thought was, what can we do to provide savings now? We realized that the desperate need for cash up front. And so some scenarios we looked at were keeping the debt the same and just giving you money up front, taking $1 million, well, whatever the dollar amount you could squeeze out now for marketing and other purposes. And we kind of, and with a lot of feedback from the county, kind of ended up with the scenario that we're talking about. But that is not the only way to do it. There are ways where you could take some savings up front and then levelize it. There's no free lunch here. I mean, whatever you take now, it's gonna increase later. Mm-hmm. But if you wanted to look at some scenarios where there was some savings, some likely modest savings up front, again, you're still facing an increase here. So I just wanted to throw that out. This isn't the only way to look at it.
Well, but I mean, one of the challenges that I see too is you're saying that you're leveling off our debt service, but really you're not, because any increases in revenues that we have are going to increase our costs because we have to fund that sinking fund.
That's right. So, and no, you're exactly right. The sinking fund, and that's something we went back and forth on as to how to trigger that. At what dollar amount do you trigger it? As Brian mentioned, right now your room tax revenues are about 20 million, and in discussions with the county, we thought, well, you need a little time to kind of get back to your game. So let's not start it at initially. Let's not start it immediately. Let's give you a little time to go back, and then instead of starting at 30%, ease into it. And so yeah, that's.
I mean, we're going to have increased costs because of the sinking fund.
And I would like to add, for the record, John Sherman, Washoe County Finance Director, you're talking about a kind of a gain sharing position, and it is relative to the existing debt structure. Now, I could agree, and that point was made, that relative to the existing debt structure, if you went to level, and then you had this revenue gain sharing, would the total cash out of pocket for RSCVA be better or worse off, to your point? And with the structure of the sinking fund that we had, your cash position, given a certain growth scenario, would be better off. And so that was the point. So it's not like, okay, we do this level debt service and we have a sinking fund. We compare that to the existing debt structure cash flow requirements. Are we worse or better off? And if you're worse off, I'd agree. Why would you want to do that? But at the end of the day, we tried to structure it so you're better off, but yet we get some protection on the backside to get rid of this extended debt. So that was why we went through so many iterations to get to the point where we're at.
If I could continue just to, and as Mr. Sherman said, what we did is we did an analysis, and it's not before you here, but basically we looked at what are your payments now versus what are your payments with the refunding and the sinking fund, and then compared those two to make sure, are you better off? Because as stated, if you're worse off, you wouldn't do it. So one final point, just some observations in terms of whether you pursue this now or whether you wait. Certainly, no one can predict where interest rates are going to be. I'm going to be the first. I don't know, but there are a few things kind of going on that everyone just should kind of be aware of in terms of discussion out there. The Federal Reserve sets short-term interest rates. You're talking about borrowing long-term interest rates, and of course, when the Fed raises short-term, generally long-term rates follow. Currently, short-term rates are basically at zero, so they're not going to go down. They're going to go up, and the question is how much and when. So you kind of have to kind of keep that in mind. That likely that the chances of them moving up are certainly a lot better, in my opinion, than going down. You also have some Fed programs that are going on where they're going to stop this quantitative easing where they're out buying mortgages and things. That's coming to an end, which could have some impact on interest rates. There's market professionals, Warren Buffett and others, who have indicated they expect inflation. So right now there's savings to be achieved on a refinancing. It's a matter of where you take it. If you wait in the future, you may have savings in the future. I mean, we don't know, but you may be in a position where rates are higher, and not only do you have escalating payments, but then you're at a point where you don't have the savings aspect to it. So I just want to.
Mr. Chairman, you know, and I agree with what you're saying, the interest rates are kind of at zero, but really what's moving the market right now is a bunch of capital sitting on the sidelines, and they're anxious to jump into some kind of an earning aspect versus 25 basis points that the Fed is currently paying. So what I'm seeing is spreads are tending to trend downward, not interest rates. So it's that spread over a specific margin that is really what you're kind of looking at. So I understand what you're saying. You know, I don't really see interest rates can't go any lower. I mean, it's impossible. You know, it can go to zero, I guess. But, you know, really what I'm seeing is a lot of capital that's getting antsy on the sidelines that wants to be deployed, and spreads are coming down because that's how you get capital into the markets, is the spreads decline.
Other comments, Jerry?
I don't think I have anything much different to add, except that I did ask Brian for the cost of the transaction and what the actual additional cost would be to the RSCVA for the extension during the different scenarios. And I have a very difficult time saying, yes, let's do this, when I see so little front-end benefit, and yet we're adding additional debt burden to the RSCVA. And I'm not going to support moving forward on this.
Other comments?
I'm really torn, because I know from the perspective of being a county commissioner and being responsible for any debt that might be here, I'm wondering and asking Mr. Sherman, I said, what do you think about what Mr. DeVold said about a sitting president and the possibilities of interest rates dropping with the presidential election and that sort of thing? I think we really need to stop and think, is that a chance that we're taking?
You're always taking a chance. I mean,
It is a risk. It is a risk.
But I
understand that, but
I don't see the benefit right now. I mean, that's where I'm at. Especially with the sinking fund out there. To me, it doesn't make any sense. So,
okay.
Other comments? Anyone want to make a motion?
Could I just add on the sinking fund piece that was at the staff level, that it has not gone to the county for their council to make a...
I know, but the county commissioners we have sitting at this table have made it very clear that they take Mr. Sherman's recommendations to heart.
As they should.
Jim, you want to make a motion?
You know, and I agree. You know, I mean, you're probably not doing your job if you're not listening to Mr. Sherman. He's a pretty bright guy, so I think that's a very good thing. You know, Mr. Chairman, basically what I would like to do is make a recommendation that we table this recommendation for refinance, but continue to keep it on staff's radar screen. If there is a beneficial scenario that presents itself, you know, let's revisit it. But you know, I don't think that we have a time when we can't access Mr. Sherman and provide him a scenario that possibly still works with us, and work with our finance guys here to try and figure out, is there a way that really makes something, you know, if there's a change within the market rate, a new product or something that comes up that really benefits us, I'd be supportive of that. But you know, at this point, I'd like to table the refinance measure.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Brian?
Is there a threshold or a structure that you all would be looking for, just so that we know what we should be looking for? If this isn't it now, is there, you know, does it need to be 300,000 in savings, or a number, or an interest rate, or a total savings?
I think from my standpoint, I mean, this is very minimal savings that we're looking at here. I mean, I think it's got to be something substantial. Wouldn't, you know? I mean, you're watching the markets, and I'm sure Mr. Sherman is. I mean, if you see something that obviously is better than what we're looking at today, I would say substantially better than what we're looking at today, then you bring it forward to us. I mean, that's always an option. I just don't see the benefit in extending those 3 years based upon what we're looking at today. And again, I mean, I might be the minority on this one, but I've really still got some heartburn about the sinking fund too. I mean, if that's still a part of if that's still going to be a part of the package, I'm not going to support it. So.
You know, Brian, maybe to try and give you a little bit of direction, I'm kind of thinking that it's got to be in a 50 basis points on an overall average refinance. I think that probably is where I would start getting my interest peaked, is at a 50 basis point drop in the overall average life of the loan rate. And I don't know how that's actually calculated or if that's even possible. But like I say, I think...
So in round numbers, to your point, if we're around 5 now, you're looking 4.5 just as a threshold? Just trying to
if you
gauge
get me to
it so loosely.
4.6, I mean, you know, I mean, we've got the experts sitting here. You know, maybe that's an unrealistic expectation. But you know, if there's a different product out there that takes care of that, you know, I know Dwight's kind of part on the sinking fund. I don't know. I'm kind of, you know, if I get 80 cents of the dollar and they get 20 cents and I can still spend 80 cents towards marketing, I guess I'm, you know, I'm not as hard and fast as Dwight is. I mean, but you know, that's just my personal preference. I think if it improves our lives significantly, that's really what I'm looking for. If I've got, you know, the opportunity to refund these in 8 to 10 years, that would entice me a little bit more. That 22-year lockout really was the part that was really kind of frightening me, to be real honest with you. So if there's an opportunity to refund in an 8 to 10 year window, okay, that's a potential thing too. So hopefully I've given you enough, you know, that helps you kind of understand, and I'd love to hear other comments.
If I could again, Scott Nash, one thing we can do is we can do some analysis in terms of comparing what we think are achievable savings now versus points in the future. Because these bonds are now essentially currently callable, the longer you wait, the fewer bonds you have to refund, so they generally get worse over time. That's assuming constant interest rates, which is a huge assumption here. So if you wait over time for these types of transactions, you actually need lower rates to get the same savings you could get earlier in the process. Now your bonds that we would refund are heavily backloaded, so it's not as extreme as other transactions. If we came to you and said, if you do this in a year, you'll need rates to drop 100 basis points to get the same savings today, then you would likely say, well, let's do it because it's either now or never. I'm not saying that's the case now, but what we can do is look at some other scenarios, get the direction that we've received today, and come back in the future and then provide you with a little more information in terms of what this would look like into the future. Realizing too, the longer you wait, levelizing it to the scenario where it was levelized to 9.8, the more you wait, that's going to be a harder target to fix or to achieve, meaning that if you levelize it in a year or two, it may be at 10 million or some higher number. Those are things we just don't know about. We try to quantify what we can, but we're still making an interest rate play here one way or another. If you do the transaction, you've locked in rates. If you don't, you're waiting for rates. So,
okay, we've got a motion and a second on the floor. Any other discussion? Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry I came in late. Trying to understand the sinking fund. I don't know if action has been taken. Your question implied, I'm not sure if incorporating the sinking fund into this motion is part of the motion.
It's not. It's just we're continuing this thing completely.
Well, I'll offer a motion to initiate the sinking fund, you know, at the appropriate time.
We're not. We've got a motion and a second on the floor currently, and we're not.
Just wanted to announce that.
But if we're not moving forward with the refinancing, why would we put a sinking fund?
To reduce the possible risk to the county of Washoe.
So you want to implement a sinking fund even if we don't do a refinancing?
I think it's worth discussing.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye. Which motion are we?
Your motion. You can't have a motion.
That we continue to look at.
We continue this item.
Okay, all right, I'm in favor of that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I don't think we have an item on the agenda to discuss a sinking fund based upon our current debt, so I don't think we can move in that direction. So, Mr. Hall?
Mr. Chairman, one of the things that I found lacking in the staff report was the analysis that would have allowed me to benefit from the expertise of our own staff, as well as Mr. Sherman and our consultant. I think another time when something like this is presented to the board, it would be better if the information was given to us in more depth, I guess more an in-depth analysis that allows us to consider the pros and cons of each one of the scenarios that were presented to us. And in addition, the suggestion that Commissioner Humke is making about, or I suppose is going to make about a sinking fund, rather than sit here and make a decision about doing something like that today, I would rather have staff come back to us, give us the details of how that's going to work and the impact it's going to have on the RSCVA as an agency and the protections it might afford to the county, and let us make an informed decision based on information that's given to us.
Yeah, and I mean, if we do want a future agenda item to address this, that's fine. But in that situation, I want to know what is the risk to the county. I mean, that's the thing I keep bringing up, is 100% of our revenues are pledged to debt service. So what is the risk? And I mean, so if we're going to have an agenda item about that, then bring that back to me. You know, I mean, if we're going to have to set revenues aside in a sinking fund to pay off debt, where already 100% of our revenues are pledged to that, I mean, we have to pay our debt service first. There is no risk to the county, and now you want to set a sinking fund aside? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. And we can set, you know, we can discuss having an agenda item to that later in the agenda. So, other than that, I think we're through with that item, and we'll move on. We've got review and approval of the minutes. Any changes?
Move to approve?
Motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item B, President's Report. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll keep my remarks brief. It's been a busy month. As you'll see here shortly, Brian's going to lay out our proposed budget for next year. We're spending a lot of time and effort trying to get our numbers square and bring everything back in balance. So we're bringing that forward. We're going to give you a run through today on what we're proposing, and then we'll ask that in our May meeting that be adopted so we can send to the state. But we thought a quick run through today would help as we move forward. Most of you all are aware that the Sienna Hotel and Spa reopened this month. And I'll have to tell you, it's quite a beautiful place. They've done a lot of really nice things down there in the casino. Haven't been up to the rooms, but the casino, the restaurants, the exterior. It's always nice to have one of our stakeholders come back and reopen and helps in downtown as well. We are now, I don't want to steal too much of John's thunder, but we are now fully staffed in our convention sales department. Which we've been working on pretty diligently for the last 8 or 9 months. So that's something that we've all been looking forward to, and looking forward now to making some progress and seeing some results. Just one other heads up, in addition to actually adopting our budget in May, it's our intent right now to bring forward our sales and marketing plan. The intent is that we'll be bringing that forward, and at the request of the Finance Committee, we'll be presenting it not only at the Sales and Marketing Committee, but also at the Finance Committee meeting. So to kind of give everybody a basic understanding of the direction that we're headed in fiscal year 2011 and 12. Just a couple of little housekeeping items. I believe by this time next month, Ms. Cunningham is contracted or is working with the University of Nevada. The students at I guess in some of their marketing classes or photography classes or all that will be putting the artwork that Mr. Carano suggested. So hopefully this time next month you'll see a number of pieces of art. Courtesy, or we're actually working with and paying, but I wouldn't say courtesy, but we're working with the University of Nevada photography department. And lastly, if you're looking for Brian and his staff, they're in the old tourism office. We've moved our tourism staff over into the convention sales, which is now the Convention and Tourism Sales Department. So Brian, Jeff, and the rest of the staff, our internal audit, are all over in the executive area. And we are picking up, once again, it's a small amount of money, but an additional $1,500 a month by renting their space to Health Access, the group that's already rented what used to be our HR department and what used to be our tourism department. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm more than happy to entertain any questions.
Questions? Jerry?
Regarding the artwork, Mr. Carano suggested we could put on the walls. I have an offering, a local artist, and I only have one copy of this. I can pass it around. And I don't know if you guys would be interested in this or not, but it's a local artist, and this is all art of northern Nevada. I'm talking landmarks, casinos, all northern Nevada type art.
We can take it.
And this gentleman's willing to put them on permanent loan at no cost to us. I've seen them. I think they're beautiful. They're kind of folk art type
You like that?
stuff.
You like that cost?
Yeah, the finance chairman likes nothing a month.
Permanent loan for no cost.
Jerry, why don't you handle our financing?
And the only, I guess, thing that would cost us anything would be some of them might need to be framed, but I'm willing to go see if I can get some donations for framework on them.
All right.
And there's 100 of them in this booklet, and some of them there are 2 or 3 of the same ones. And if you guys would like, I could pass this around.
Well, that would be great. I'd also like if Ms. Cunningham could
Yeah,
have a look,
absolutely.
because she's kind of
Not to
No,
discount
absolutely not.
anything with UNR. I mean, I think that's great.
We work on a number of projects throughout the year with the photography group up there. Was the reason that we reached out to them, but we're certainly not married to that decision by any means. It's just Jennifer has offered to kind of take that project on to dress up the office in her department.
We could use both.
Great, thank you. That concludes my remarks, Mr. Chairman, unless anybody has any additional questions.
Thanks, Joe. Any other questions? Okay. Moving on for consent agenda. We got
Excuse
Mark.
me, Mr. Chairman, I did have one other thing. I apologize.
You're too late.
You all also, and maybe you all received the job description from our search firm, and I believe we've asked, if you haven't already and you do have comments, that you return those directly to our chairman, because I believe he's still moving ahead, and maybe you can address that later. But if you haven't seen, we sent it out via email, so if you haven't seen that or need another copy, please let us know.
And I was going to cover that under board member comments, but since you brought it up, yeah, if there's any comments, get them back to me. I think as far as my conversations with the search firm, everything's moving along fairly well. I'll have a revised timeline and everything for everybody soon. We'll get it out, and then we'll get it on the agenda next month for approval. But I think the goal right now is to have interviews from the stakeholder group sometime in June, with applicants back to the board in July, early July, mid-July, for interviews from the board. So, I mean, that's the time frame I think we're on right now. And I'll get that out to everybody as soon as I've got it finalized. And then we'll have it on next month's agenda for approval. So, any other questions? Moving on to Marketing Committee, consent agenda. Mr. Carano.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll be asking for consent approval for items number 7, C, D, and E. C is the convention sales report for the month of February. February actually ended up being our second best month for hotel room nights booked by our convention sales team. We don't get too excited though, because I guess we still had at that time 4 open positions. We actually hit 35% of our goal for the month of February. So we're not 100% of our goal, but it was actually our second highest of the year, I guess. And then going back year to date, hotel room nights and facility room nights are 24% of the goal. So, you know, I don't really want to spend too much time on that. we've been in this situation for some time now. Now, the biggest thing is and I would like to have John speak to this right now if he can, is Joe just said we're at full complement in regards to being fully staffed. So, John, you want to take it away and tell us the new hires and all the positions we have filled?
Thank you, Mr. Carano. And along the lines of production, before I start talking about the staffing, you know, we're looking back in February, but also I want to announce that in March and April, we also have continued successive growth in our production. So now 4 out of the last 5 months are continued growth over previous months. So we're starting to make some strides in getting where we need to be, but of course we're nowhere close to the goals, and that's what we need to accomplish. So, but I'm excited to report that we are fully staffed, and I'm real excited about the folks that I'm bringing on board here. Julia Wilmot, she started last week. She will be handling our small meetings market. Brings a tremendous amount of energy, great customer relationship building skills, some great research skills and strategic skills to go out and find business. She's coming to us, she's a graduate of UNR, was with Best Buy, moved to Minneapolis, got into the hotel business up there, is moving back here. I think she's going to do a dynamic job for us in that small meetings market, with obviously a concentration in the Northern California area, which is where a lion's share of that business comes from in that market segment. Cindy Wendt will be starting Monday, May 2nd, handling our Chicago market, based in Chicago, in one of the suburban areas there. Strong background in the Chicago area, working in national sales for many years with Marriott and Hilton. Great training, great experience, high energy. Really, when she came out and did her interviews, fell in love with the destination. I think that she's going to do a fantastic job for us. And then Connie Williams, who has been doing task force for us, starting back in February. She worked for me before when I was in Omni, and she oversaw my Western region. She will be based in the Palm Springs area. She recently moved there about a year ago. Her strength is in the Southern California market. I was real excited about this opportunity. I think that that's where we have some real growth and probably less duplication of effort, if you will. I think we've got the Northern California area pretty well covered with existing relationships, and Julia handling that. The hotels have a strong presence in Northern California. I'm looking for incremental growth in that Southern California, Arizona area. Connie has some strong presence in there, but also with her national sales experience, she actually goes up to Northwest area and strong presence up in Seattle. So full staff, real excited, and we'll start seeing the benefits of that real soon.
Okay. Thank you very much, John. And for me, I'm pretty excited about that in regards to now finally having full staff. We haven't had a full staff for over a year. So we hopefully will start seeing all the fruit from that. Any question in regards to convention sales? Again, we dug ourselves a big hole, starting all the way back without having a VP of sales all the way back end of January last year, 2010, and having empty positions in all of our different markets. Now we're full and ready to go, and we'll be having FAM trips to Chicago and Washington, D.C., I think, going, and so I'm excited, and I know John's out meeting with hoteliers to make sure that we've got a good plan going with all hoteliers. So any questions of convention sales? Not hearing any. Go back to on item D is the tourism. Tourism hit 98% of their goal for the month of February, and February was a pretty good month in occupancy, I think. I got to go back and look at the numbers there, but and we're at 91%. But again, all those numbers really are tour and travel doing a good job, but it's really the hoteliers and the OTA. I think someplace around 85% to 90% of those room nights are coming through OTAs, which are people going online looking for the best deal, Expedia. I would like to bring up this time a little something I saw the other day, and you may have seen it, and if you haven't seen it yet, you might see it on TV. Hotel.com, Expedia, they're advertising on TV. It's a cute little commercial with cartoonists, cartoons, and it's this one character saying to Mr. Smart sitting behind a computer, and the one character says, "Have you made your reservation?" "Yeah." "Have you made your reservation?" "Was it going to Reno or Las Vegas or Orlando or whatever?" "No, I've got to teach you to wait. You have to wait." So the whole idea is you have to wait till the last 3 days, and you get 30% discounts. This cartoon now breaks to two turtles at the start line, and their legs are out and everything. The gun goes off, the turtles pull their legs in, right? And they have to teach you to wait, and then, there's a couple other cartoons, and then two guys sitting here, just waiting to make a reservation. They're watching grass grow. The point is as far as yield managing, and Jerry, this, as far as yield managing, we're supposed to try to give the good rates out as far as possible, and then the last 3 days you're supposed to, charge your highest rates. Hotel Expedia is going exactly against any and all of the average daily rate management systems I've ever seen. And it's just another thing. The Hotel Expedia, in my opinion, and I know Jennifer's heard me talk about this, they're killing this community. This community right here, and I say this because the RSCVA, we're losing revenue. I at the Silver Legacy or El Dorado or any of the other hotels here, Saving Harris and Circus, they may have special deals tied into Las Vegas, I'm not sure. But we pay 18% to other OTAs, which is pretty high. In the old days it used to be 10% travel agency fees. We pay 18%. With Hotel Expedia, we're paying upwards of 45%. 45%, and that's coming right out of these coffers right here. And so, and I say this because you've heard me talk about this before, but you've seen American Airlines, have their battles with Hotel Expedia recently, and others are too. But in the end of the day, one property can't do it, two properties can't do it. The Sands actually tried to do something about a few years ago, and Hotel Expedia just took them right off. So it's really got to be a community effort, and the only people who can do it would be this, in my opinion anyway, this organization here, by educating our CEOs around the community that, hey, we got to cut a better deal. We're actually, again, 40, 45, 50%, even upwards of that sometimes a year. So, that comes again right out of this revenue here. So anyway, having said that, I just thought I'd throw that out there. The tourism numbers that are generated there, really 90% of that is that we talk about here is just, is just a number that's again generated by the OTAs. We did realign our tourism staff. So go ahead, John.
Thank you, Mr. Carano, and you're absolutely right. Our dependency on the OTA side is something that we want to address on the tourism side. I've been meeting with Adam and Terry and gone out and talked to the hotels to try to gain an understanding of, what have we been focusing on, where have we had duplication of efforts, how do we reduce duplication efforts, where are some incremental gains that we might be able to chase and grab from other areas. And we're going to be shifting some of our focuses away. There is a presence and there is a need to be in the OTA market. We can't just ignore it and let it go away. It'd be kind of like saying, we can't shop at Walmart anymore. That's the biggest distribution channel. That's where you want to be. You do want to have the right shelf space. You don't want to be in the lower shelf, all that kind of stuff. But we want to change that mix as best as we can. And there's some other markets, AAA is an area that we probably haven't spent a lot of energy and time on, that we see as an opportunity to maybe grow. We think that there's more opportunities with the ski business and the groups that we go after, how we do that and try to do that differently with more energy, more aggressiveness. We think that there's opportunities in the group tour series that we probably haven't is exploited as best as we can. So we're trying to move away from our direct selling and shift some of that focus away from that OTA side to other business to hopefully lessen our dependency upon it. I'm real excited. Adam and Terry are, they're great two guys that are really committed, focused, and we're changing our account plan strategies too. We're talking. I have lunch next week with Expedia and TripIt and all that kind of stuff to try to find what can we do differently. Are there things that we can do to maybe change our ADR approach or change our marketing approach, maybe bring more value add and less dependency on rate. All in the learning mode right now, but real excited about the opportunity.
Thank you. I don't mean to bore the board in regards to the OTAs, but I'll bore you one more second here. I was part of a webinar 2 days ago. A webinar was a conference over the computer and telephone, and actually we had an Expedia guy, Vice President of Marketing, whatever his title there, telling us his promotions and everything, and why they're good for us. And OTAs do spend a lot of money out there marketing, and there's what they call the billboard effect, where hey, you go on an OTA and look at them, and then you see the nugget there, and then I go right to the nugget and I book the nugget as opposed to booking on the OTA. So there are some billboards. That's a positive. It was interesting. This guy was presenting, and he was presenting on how to yield. We're gonna help you yield because we're gonna do all these promotions 3 months out, 4 months out, and 2 months out. We're gonna yield this. So right at this time, I had my guy who's running the meeting on our side. I said, "Hey, type in there. What about your current campaign where you're teaching everybody to wait?" And he stumbled. Right, he stumbled because. Well, that's a new campaign we're doing here, and it's directly against anything and everything we're trying to do. So anyway, so that's the tourism numbers are basically OTAs. Enough on that. We have item E is marketing, and really, I mean, there's some things to speak to there, I guess. One thing that's really good is that we continue to grow in our unique visitation to the website, and that's up 145% or something like that. We did lose our in February back then, but we have replaced that position. Do we have a current Jennifer?
We've got some qualified candidates and continuing interviews throughout this week. So we expect to fill it very soon.
And excuse me, then that's Jennifer Carrion-Hamler speaking, but she's speaking to our social marketing position that we've actually our person left us, and so we've got an open position there, and that's really social marketing. Social media is a very important part going forward. Everybody's using these things, so. We did receive, again real quickly, we did receive a report from Jeff Eastman in regards to the TAP report, and just to make it real quickly, we still know that 2012 and 2014 are not very good years, but they're getting better, and we'll get a lot better now that we have full complement of sales team. And then interesting that Jeff Eastman did come out and say is our cities that we compare to, that we compete against, or just in general, Chicago is now, instead of charging for McCormick Center, is now giving it away, and so the environment still continues to be extremely competitive. But as I was in this webinar the other day, this webinar did suggest that occupancies are going up nationwide. Occupancies are going up, and as the occupancy goes up, ADR is not going up quite as high as occupancies, but things seem to be coming back. But then, oh, by the way, we had the great tsunami hit Japan, and then the oil situation, which those things do cause travel situations for the, and potentially gasoline prices, and this is just for, and then indirectly or directly affect this organization. But in regards to the TAP report, we still know that we have issues in the 2012-14. They did present a new report that has monthly, and so we're going to get better to understand that report. I think they're going to be sending it out to us monthly now, is that right?
Yes, and I actually just sent out the peer report to the larger convention boxes earlier this week.
Okay. All right, any questions? You're good, okay.
Sure. You know, it looks like the number of people on the DRT is higher, but the amount of time spent looking is lower. Can you attribute that to anything? I mean, is it something we can do to the website to make it more interesting? I mean, can we make it more user-friendly so people stay online longer? Yeah, I know that's a small thing, but I mean, I think it all adds up.
I'm sorry, could you repeat your
DRT
question?
website. I see that the amount of time people spend online looking at our website is lower. I mean, last year, or 09, 010, it was 3 minutes and 31 seconds. Now it's 2.5 minutes. Is there something we can do to increase the amount of time spent on the website and curiosity and interest?
It's kind of debatable because you want to get to a happy medium. You don't want people plowing through too much information and being on site because they can't find their information. And yes, you don't want them on and off in a real quick manner either.
So it's because it's a more efficient website? Is that what you're saying?
The thought process is that they're able to find their information more efficiently, yes.
And that's why time spent is down.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I have another question that we kind of went over in sales and marketing, and I don't want to sound like I'm trying to oversee what is going on with your department, John, but I'm looking at this year, we got 1,400 prospecting calls. I mean, is that 1,400 different people we contacted, or is that a bunch of the same people, or what's the results?
Prospecting calls are defined as contacts that we have not had relationships with. So they are to represent new business opportunities. They are only counted if we connect with the customer and we have a direct conversation. It's not if we left a message or anything along those lines. As far as the results or the return on that investment, one of the metrics that we will be proposing to the Sales and Marketing Committee and then to the board is to move away from prospecting call metrics and talk about new business development. Because at the end of the day, that's the result we're looking for. I'm not a big fan of counting how many calls they make. I want to know how many quality calls are you making. And so we're going to propose a metric to talk about new business development and what's that mix and how are we growing forward with that. Now, when you look at the number of calls too, recognize we didn't change our call goal as we've had open positions. So we're significantly short on those goals because I don't have those bodies making those calls. But where we do have bodies in place, they're pretty good on target to some of those calls.
And I know you just added everybody to the team, and I don't want to sit here and say, you know, don't want to give you a chance to get production out of them. Seems like an awful lot of calls for not much return.
Well, you know, one of the things that we are challenged with is we try to benchmark ourselves against last year's numbers, and it's always important to look at last year and against our goal. Last year we were fortunate enough to book significant number of repeat annuals for multi-year deals. When you look at our full year complement of production last year, over 50% of that was multi-year deals on repeat business.
Repeat calls are not repeat calls, right? So it's not
same people. You're not getting repeat business out of these calls. These are new people.
Hey, Jerry, can you turn your mic on? Thank
I'm
you.
sorry. So, but the prospecting calls are new contacts, not repeat contacts.
True.
Okay.
But what you also have to realize in there is every one of our positions is a relatively new position. It takes the time it takes to turn the big numbers, which is what really makes up the largest percentage of our goal. Those are 2-3 year booking cycles. So when you make a call today, it takes 12 months to see some of that benefit, because the buy cycle is a rather lengthy cycle. The short-term meeting focus that I'm creating is where I'm looking to improve those results. Right now, currently, or until I had that small meetings focus, all positions were equally focused on short-term, long-term, and mid-term. I'm trying to change, then shift that strategy so that we have that short-term focus that has a higher return on those prospecting calls.
Okay, thanks, John.
Any other questions?
Well, thank you very much, Jerry, for the questions. You know, in the TAP report, interesting again, Jeff Eastman did say that due to still the uncertainty of the economy and, like I said, Libya and Japan and whatever, he did say that meetings are actually booking shorter term, that they're back to wait. So they're waiting last minute to book, or as long as they can to wait. It's a challenge out there right now. It's competitive. I mean, if this economy does show an uptick, and if we can sell the gasoline price down, I feel comfortable that we can actually get some good things going. Again, having a full complement of staff is, and if we can, if John can develop accountability for the staff and make sure that they're doing the sales calls, follow up and make sure the California gal down there is doing her job, the Washington jobs are doing their jobs, and Chicago. We just need to make sure we're on top of that, and John's got that background. So,
In case I didn't say it, thank you and congratulations, and I feel like giving you a round of applause for filling all those positions.
John, I would concur with that. Congratulations. That's a big job to get all those folks filled up, and so now just book business, baby.
I would just say that the pressure's on now, John, because you have a full staff, so looking for big things.
Now it's results.
The honeymoon is over. So, going on, we did receive reports from Ms. Bernstein in regards to our core market brand tracking studies, and that was, basically the billboard campaign and the campaign in Northern California, and the comparison to August results last year, and they did a study August last year and February this year, and just real quickly, it was a positive report in such that it wasn't a negative report, right? The numbers really didn't change that much, but it was good. There were people who were saying the large percentage of the target market said they would come back and revisit Reno, and so it was a positive deal, and maybe we can share that with the entire board somehow. Did you have anything you want to add there?
I was just going to mention that we're trying to schedule her to come back towards the end of summer to give initial results of our visitor survey and share those results as well with the board.
Say it was very strong results, that we had continual growth in awareness and in an intent to visit in our key target markets, which I think is outstanding for any kind of a campaign. So I thought it was great.
Good.
You were a little tempered in your excitement.
That's why you have a microphone in front of you. Okay. Yeah, and then one further thing we had presentation on was our Come See Fly Free program, where John has instituted a program to fly qualified meeting planners out here, and so we had 38 inquiries to fly free to Reno and have a nice trip out here, and we qualified, I think, 5 of them.
Yes, and currently we have one verbal definite that's worth about 950 room nights. We just had a meeting yesterday with the directors of sales, and we're pleased with the results so far. The challenge that I didn't anticipate was how long it takes to convert from that inquiry to an actual site visit. But in the pipeline, we've got, to Mr. Carano's point, 5 other opportunities that will be coming through here and seeing our destination probably sometime in the next 45 days or so.
Okay, yeah, let's see, just a couple of things to remind. This was the month of February, so in February we did have Elton John in the Reno Event Center. We had Journey in the Reno Event Center. Things we did also talk about in the marketing committee meeting were the choir games that will come to Reno next week and next weekend. And Joe, you're on stage. Joe, what do we got? 14 choirs, 22 teams. 14 choirs, 22 teams.
Jennifer, do you want to address the choir games for us, please?
14 choirs, 4 of which are from our Reno area, 10 are from outside, and some overseas. I think we've got a great program put together. Everything's kind of come together. We're doing a Wednesday night performance is going to be in the Pioneer Theater, and we've given away, about 400 tickets for the public to attend. Thursday all-day competition, Friday all-day competition, and then Saturday there's a friendship concert at Trinity Church. Saturday night's the Grand Prix finale. So for all intents and purposes, everything has come together beautifully. Thank you.
Glenn, can I ask how many room nights this is generating?
No.
You can ask. No, you might not get an answer. You can.
It's a little over 400. A little over 400, Mr. Tretton, against a goal of 7,000.
Just a little short of our goal. Yeah. But at any rate, okay. And then one further thing we wanted to bring up is that in the special event area, funding a special event, we had some leftover monies there that we've actually contributed to targeted towards the Patty Sheehan and Friends LPGA golf tournament that you're all invited to participate in. It's the first weekend in June at the Hidden Valley Country Club golf course. That's the home of Patty Sheehan's. And at any rate, so that'll be a Saturday, Sunday Patty Sheehan and Friends LPGA Legends tournament. So we'll have 40 of the great women golfers, and we don't have a list as of yet, I don't believe, but Beth Daniels, Nancy Lopez, I don't think has. She's on the fence, but I mean, so some big names out there. And I know on behalf of Civil Lacey, we bought a sponsorship so I can put 8 of my big golfers out there and see if they could hit it past these women. And that's always fun to see if you can, right? Heck, because I mean, Patty Sheehan, I know she could still hit that thing. She could. So anyway, so that's happening, and that again came out of the special event budget. All right.
Just on that note, Glenn, I heard that the Pro-Am's already sold out.
Yeah.
For that event.
Yeah. So
It's not how far you hit it, it's what the score is at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'm not good at scoring. Yeah. I do carry an eraser on my pencil, though. So, Mr. Chairman, that is my report. Any questions? I'd entertain any questions or have staff answer all the questions. Thank you, Jerry, for participating.
Any other questions?
Would you approve the report?
Okay.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Mr. DeVold.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under tab F is the February 2011 report of operations and transient lodging statistics. You can see that we had a nice month in February, 11.5 point increase over the budget, about $165,000 in additional room tax revenues for the RSCVA. Facility margins were a little above budget at 17 $1,000, and year-to-date revenues are about $341,000 over budget, about 1.5% better than we projected. So nice stuff. Also on the facility revenues, we're about $137,000 below budget. Room tax statistics on the next page. Year-to-date cash occupied rooms were right at budget. Cash occupancy is about 35.5%, and cash average room rates are at $73.41, which is about $1.50 above what we budgeted. Mr. Carano had talked several times about the TAP report. The TAP report is the very last page right before the green tab there. You can see that we still have about $44,000 under pace target for 2012, obviously a big concern for us, and something I know John's working on diligently. Something that I'd like to direct your attention to, beyond the green sheet there, you'll see a consolidated summary of the financial performance of each one of our primary business operations. Report of operations for the month of February generated an actual $740,000 profit above operating expenses, which is extremely nice. Consolidated summary for the 8 months, we're down about $2 million. So we made a bunch of headway back in February, obviously, nice stuff. And then each one of the convention center, the bowling stadium, the livestock events center, and the golf course is right behind that. I encourage everybody to look at that individual departmental profit for each one of those and see where we are month to date, and then the 8 months prior. So Brian and your staff, thank you very much for providing that. That's kind of a nice quick dashboard to be able to go to and see exactly where we are on each one of those operations. So anyway, Brian, thanks to your staff for doing that for us. Under tab G is the client critique forms. And basically, I'll just zing through those really quickly. This scoring system is based on a 1 to 7 scoring system, 1 being a very poor experience and 7 being an excellent experience. If you go to the graphs in that side, you can see the Reno Sparks Convention Center client survey. We had a sample size of 10. Average score was 6.6. So we've got a pretty satisfied group of people going through that facility. The Livestock Events Center sample size was 12, and that was about 6.5. And then the other ones are much smaller, just because that's the way it works. So anyway, most of those are in the 6.5 range. So I think we're supplying a pretty good product, and the people that are filling out these surveys are heavy users of those, and that bodes well for us into the future. Under tab H, you'll see the monthly highlights. Actually, it's tab H through L. You'll see the highlights for each one of the convention center and kind of the big shows that went through each one of those. And I won't bore everybody with reading through each one of those, but suffice to say that we're seeing some nice activity through all of those facilities. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve consent agenda items under tabs F through L.
Got a motion, do we have a second? Second. Motion and a second. Any discussion, questions? Jerry?
Yeah, I guess I'm curious.
I love it, Jerry. Bring it on.
Curious as to what some of the questions are.
Can you turn your mic on, please?
I guess I'm curious as to what are the questions on these facility rating sheets. Looks like we need no improvement at all. I mean, it's all way above average on the graphs, the ratings. And, you know, I'm not going to disagree with it, but, you know, everybody I've talked to that's gone to REC has a problem with the sound system. And I think that Kelly is a major part of a good experience, especially if you're going to hold concerts there.
Well, as far as the concert goes, we don't control the sound systems. And for instance, where Mr. Carano brought up, at both Elton John and Journey, they bring in their sound systems. And which are beyond our control. We actually have a sound system you can make announcements on, or when we have boxing tomorrow night, that's what the ringside announcer will use. And just so that we're clear, the reviews are sent back, are filled out by concerts very seldom respond. The concert promoters do, but it's the promoter, not necessarily the fans.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I get a few of those. I get emails after every show. Too loud, not loud enough. I couldn't hear.
I mean,
so.
rock concerts, they're usually loud, but I'm just saying, maybe somebody needs to work with these guys to improve the quality of the sound, because I mean, I've heard that from everybody that's been to a concert there.
Well, they're perfect.
And I understand it's their sound system. Maybe we could do something to help them make it sound better.
Well, they'll tell you they're perfect.
Yeah.
So, not really. I understand. I get a lot of the same remarks as well.
Okay, and then on the National Bowling Stadium expenses, I'm new, and I guess I just don't understand, but.
And Jerry, before you go to that, just to respond too, I mean, one of the things that we looked at when we looked at this is, I mean, you look at the sample size. I mean, the Reno Event Center sample size was 2.
Oh, okay. Okay, I guess I missed that part or overlooked it. I was tired.
Yeah, I mean, so that was, I think that was part of the challenge when we looked at these surveys. We're just not getting responses back.
We do get good responses from the Livestock Event Center and from our convention center. It's just at the Reno Event Center, you're really working with, we worked with 2 clients. We had 5 or 6 Bighorn games, and then Live Nation did both Elton John and Journey. So you really only have 2 clients, and if the Bighorns, they don't respond to the per game.
So I
and
think,
Live Nation.
to your question, I mean, I think that's part of the challenge is when you look at these surveys, look at the sample size too.
Sure, yeah, okay.
And at the stadium, from 1st of March till, mid-July, it's all United States Bowling Congress, so.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Okay. Thank you, I appreciate that. And then the expense side on the National Bowling Stadium, maybe it's because the bowler's in, but I'm looking at payroll and the related is $765,000. Special projects is $936,000. What are special projects?
Special projects are the site fees that we pay to United States Bowling Congress to host the ladies championships and as well as the open championships. They're paid up front.
Mm-hmm.
So then this year the site fees that you're seeing here are actually being paid towards 2012 ladies and 2013 open championships.
Okay.
But that's what those are.
Okay.
And obviously those are offset with higher room nights. I mean, that's really what we're driving there. You're not going to really see those room nights show up in this revenue, but boy, if you take out the bowlers out of that TAP report, it would scare you to death.
Absolutely.
So
no,
I think that's
curious to find out exactly what those numbers mean there. So thank you very much, Joe.
Any other questions? Got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Brian, item M.
If I could, just as a reminder, we're going to do a budget run-through at this point. We will officially need to adopt the budget at next month's meeting. We did want to go ahead and preview the budget with you all now. If you do have questions, please feel free to stop Brian as we're moving along, and we can address those. And with that, Brian, why don't you go ahead and get started?
And to Joe's point on the adoption next month, the meeting is actually a week earlier from a calendar standpoint as required per NRS. So I believe it's the 19th, and we should have that on the schedule. So we're going to run through at a high level this month the budget for next year. Next month you'll get a very detailed packet with departmental detail, goals, that's probably 200 pages deep. This is about 13 pages, so obviously much shorter and much more summarized than that. To kick it off, we're going to look at revenues. At a high level, room tax collections are essentially flat year over year. Given the comparison to Outlook, year over year, we obviously don't have Safari Club next year. At the bowling stadium, we have the women versus the open tournament this year, which would normally reflect a decrease. With John being fully staffed, he now has a small meeting person, and we're showing a little bit of growth in the leisure market to get us back to flat year over year. Do you want to contribute anything on the small meeting person, on the mix? Okay. Rolling on to the facilities, we've got significant decreases related obviously to the group business. A large portion of that is Safari Club and the Lady Bowlers versus the Open. Golf, we're hoping the weather's a little bit better next year. Crystal ball hopefully will hold true, as this year's been difficult, and other income is essentially flat. Total revenues year over
Can I ask
year.
a question on that? It seems like we anticipate that every year and it doesn't happen every year. So why are we anticipating it to be better?
Primarily because we had just such a rough winter this year. You know, we've had, I don't know, I've only lived here 13 years, but I don't know if I've ever seen as much snow as we did this year. And with our closures, and actually where we do better, quite honestly, is when we do have better weather in the winter, because so many of our mountain courses are closed, and the courses like Arrow Creek are you know, a little bit tougher. And when there's only courses like Washoe and Wild Creek available and Rosewood is closed, we can actually, you know, and make up margin at that point. But you're right, it's a shock. I mean,
Hey, how was our January? Because January was like summer this year. How was our January in the golf course?
January was good. We're up in revenue.
February and March were tough.
Yeah, February and March were tough, but January was up, and we actually did well with our season passes again. A lot of our January revenue is also driven by season pass sales.
Remember, March, Alpine Meadows records 17 feet of snow.
And in next month, when you see your March golf report, you that will be reflected.
I hope we don't.
I get to water my lawn 3 days.
To your point, it's a hope though, and usually the early spring, February, March, April. And if you remember, July, August as well was really hot, which impacted it as well. So there's a couple of components to that. As it relates to room tax, given that that's a significant revenue stream to us, occupied rooms are down about 12,000 year over year. There's additional available rooms. We've got the Sienna plugged in there, is opening up again this month going forward, but there was about a 5-month stretch there where those rooms were out of commission in the Outlook. With that, it reflects a slight growth in average cash rate of about 58 cents year over year, which reflects about a 0.8% growth. Is there any questions on the room tax assumptions?
What is your basis of increasing 58% average when you have more inventory coming online?
Increasing the occupancy percentage?
Yeah. No, I mean, you said you were going up on your average room rate.
That's a component of, we actually, even with taking Safari out, have a little bit of growth in convention rooms year over year of about 18,000, which was somewhat of a shock to us when we ran through the numbers, given that Safari is so large. So that obviously generates, generally speaking, a higher cash average rate, which pushes this up slightly. Going into the facility revenues, the convention center, we touched on Safari. That's a large driver on the revenue side, but it also impacts on the expense side, which we'll see later in supplies and services and in the facility margins. With Safari Club specifically, we have the costs associated with the tent, which is about $350,000, I believe, all said and done.
$450 when you count everything.
The bowling stadium reflects a decrease, again, related to significant team reduction. The ladies about 8,000. The open is right around 13. So that's the decrease there. Reno Event Center is essentially flat, and the Livestock Event Center is showing a little bit of growth due to an additional show that John's booked for next year. All said and done, again, down about $1 million or 16% year over year. Golf revenues we touched on, slightly additional rounds year over year, which drives the revenues up slightly. And then other income reflects general administrative revenues, our interest, penalties from room tax, Those are the two biggest portion there. Sales and marketing is co-op money. When we go to a trade show, we try to co-op with partners and they pay a portion of the costs associated with booths and the hospitality giveaways and things of that nature. That flows through there. Investment interest is largely the debt service fund. Significant portion of that is the $4.6 million we have socked away for the reserve with the county. And then the insurance contribution is a governmental item where the contributions for health, workers' comp, and unemployment get contributed into a separate fund, and we show it as a revenue here and an expense on the other side, under other expenses. Those are essentially flat year over year, 0.1% increase year over year. On the expense standpoint, payroll and related obviously is significantly driven by not only the events we have, but due to the staffing reductions we made earlier in the month. That was 11 full-time positions that were reduced. So we're down to 99 full-time positions at the authority from a peak 4 years ago of about 165. It also includes 12 days of furlough for all full-time employees. That's essentially one a month. Supplies and services reflect the cost for the safari tents. That's a significant decrease of about $400,000. It also reflects reduced legal and search firm costs associated with finding our new president and CEO and general and administrative expenses. And in sales, there's reduced search firm costs for finding VP of convention and tourism sales, as well as the other staff that we've just put in place. Travel is up, reflecting full staffing in sales. It's about 80,000 increase year over year. And that again is to get John's folks out to the trade shows and in front of people to try to continue booking business. Promotion and advertising, the largest hit here, and I don't know if Jennifer wants to speak to this, is in marketing. There's a list included in the staff report. I'm going to run through the big items here, but if there's any specific questions, Jennifer can address those. There's a $40,000 decrease in research, $10,000 to Sierra Ski Marketing Council, $30,000 to advertising agency fees, $78,000 to online advertising, $98,000 in broadcast and outdoor media, $39,000 in advertising production, $22,000 in consumer print, $15,000 in broadcast production, $18,000 in website design, and $17,000 in hospitality.
If I can, just in a nutshell, as far as the marketing, the majority of the cuts in marketing are directed specifically at the Far From Expected campaign, where we had hoped to go in funding at about a 1.2 million level. We're going to be funding closer to a $900,000 level. 900,000 was about what we put in this last year. We had hoped to increase in next year, but we won't be able to do that. So the majority of the items that Brian listed are related to fulfillment of the Far From Expected campaign.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
You know, I was wondering, Jennifer, if you have just a couple of seconds, if you could maybe give me like a 2-minute version of how you're going to spend this $2 million pot of money. You know, I heard the 900,000 on Far From Expected. Can you give me like some general breakdowns of how are you going to spend this money and spend it more wisely, I guess?
It's still going to be focused in the Bay Area, Northern California. Most of it will be going towards billboard placement, radio advertisement, and to Joe's point, with our budget being reduced, it's more important than ever to get our co-op hotel partners. And if we can bring on some additional partners, we will have the same level of spending as we had this year. We're right now working on a plan that we'll be meeting with the directors of marketing second week in May to kind of decide exactly what percentage is going into billboard, what percentage is going into radio. The other major expense is on e-commerce, on internet advertising through a lot of different channels to speak to our potential visitor. So the three main areas: website, internet advertising, billboard, and radio.
Thank you. Brian?
With that, special projects, again, the decrease here is related to USBC site fees largely due to the payment schedule laid out for the events that are coming in the future. With that said, expenses are decreasing year over year by almost 13% or $2.7 million. Capital and other expenses are going up. As we discussed earlier, the debt service is going up and will continue to increase in future years. The debt prior to that had been artificially lowered due to some prepayments and defeasance we'd done to some of our debt to create some budgetary savings in prior years. That is run out, and our $7 million debt payments are now up to 9.1. Following year will be 9.7 for 3 years, and then it'll step up to 10.5 for about 12 years. Sales and marketing expenses. This is just to illustrate where we've come from. Back in the peak, we were right around $10 million in total expenses. This year, we're projecting to be just below $5.5 million for the 3 areas, which is convention sales, tourism sales, and marketing. This year represents about a 10% or $600,000 decrease from prior year numbers.
If I could, just once again, back to the direction we're headed, you'll notice we just talked about the fact that marketing's budget is cut. Tourism sales, the primary cut there is based in staff, 2 staff members and some travel. But you will notice that convention sales is fully funded and their budget's actually increasing. Back to the direction that we're headed with our focus on group business. So that is the one thing, in spite of all the cuts that we're making this year, or that we were forced to make this year, we were still able to fully fund convention sales and actually add money in that department.
And the largest portion of that, again, is the additional travel and the additional payroll related to full staffing as compared to the outlook.
And we're looking for a great return on investment on that, right?
9,000%.
When you look, Brian, back to 07, 08 versus now, I mean, obviously, you know, when we're saying we're back to full staff, what was the staff back in 07, 08 in the sales department? Just out of curiosity. I mean, is that the difference between the 3.9 at that time and 2.5?
It's not the entire amount, no.
Okay.
Off the top of my head, I would say there's 8 less positions total between the 3 areas.
Okay.
I have it, I just don't have it physically with me
That's
right
fine.
now.
I was just curious. So
But it certainly would not attribute to that whole $5 million decrease
Okay.
In payroll.
Thank you.
A big chunk of that is in Jennifer's promotion and advertising lines. And then as you can see, tourism sales has gone from $1.2 million down to $400,000. So there's been some realignment there of dollars. On the general administrative side, a reduction of about $480,000 or 20%. Largest portion of this is payroll and related and legal and search firm costs that are budgeted in the or that are laid into the outlook for finding a new president and CEO.
I would like to add once again, just for everybody's knowledge, we are funded right now at a $200,000 plus benefits level for a new CEO, and that's contained within the executive office budget.
Correct.
So there is funding projected at that level beginning at about the same time that Ellen's severance package ended, about the first part of August. So there is full funding for a CEO as well, contained within the executive office line.
There's also a $25,000 moving allowance laid in there as a starting point. As it relates to expense trends year over year, again, facilities at one point was close to 17 million, is down to just over 11. We talked about sales and marketing being about 10, it's now 5.5. G&A was close to 3.7, is now down to just over 2. And capital and other, which is largely debt driven, peaked at just over 50 or just below 17 and is now 12 and change. Total expenses have come from 45.7 million down to just under 31 million in the last 4 years. So round numbers, about a third. And then this margins is the revenues net of expenses. We went into this actually at pretty good length at the Finance Committee. With the revenue decreases at the convention center, there's obviously the expense decreases associated with Safari and some of the staffing due to the business mix. So they actually, at the convention center, show a net decrease year over year of about 4.5%. And as you go down, all of the facilities and all of the sales and marketing and G&A areas reflect decreases net, with the exception again of convention sales, which is up about 75,000 net year over year, or 3.3%.
And the only thing I would point out there, once again, as far as the facilities, we talked about the facility revenues being down, but net, all of the facilities are projected to perform financially better, bottom line, next year than they did this prior year. So that's, to me, a much better benchmark of the financial performance of your facilities is what their margins are. Revenue, once again, we show the decrease in revenue, and then the expenses are all built into the general programs, if you will. But if you'll notice, all the facilities are projected to perform better next year.
With that, that concludes my report for the budget.
Questions?
CapEx expenditures, how much do we have budgeted? Maybe
CapEx, Wild Creek has 150,000, which is included in the depreciation number. The Livestock Event Center has 5,000, and the Convention Center has 500,000 budgeted, and that's to be paid from the reserve fund that we have from the bonds when they were originally issued in '99. We still have about 600,000 in round numbers for that. And Joe and his staff are actually working on a re-roofing project right now that would eat into a portion of that they're looking to get rolling in July or August prior to the weather turning bad. I don't know if there's any other items.
Average roof life on the big building is?
It really depends on how big it is, but 15 to 20 years. The last roof we put on, we got a 25-year warranty on, and we just had a roof on the back side of the building redone that had a warranty on it that all we had to pay for was the labor. They paid for the material.
And it actually, from warranty work, we actually did Hall 4, and we were able to re-roof Halls 4 and 5 as well because of some problems with the roofing material. So, and we do have the money Brian mentioned in there from the convention center expansion, but we don't intend to use it all. That's the only real reserve capital that we have for the convention center. We have a small roofing project, an elevator project, but for the most part, we're in pretty fair shape as far as FF&E. We're really in need of a major exterior paint job on the convention center. You don't notice it as much from the street, but when you get up close, a lot of the blue is fading and the red, but that won't be addressed in this year's budget.
Other questions?
What's left in the reserve for that? You mentioned the reserve
I
fund.
think we're at about
600,000.
600,000. And how much of that is going to be eaten up with the roofing project?
Budget, I believe, is about 225. They're working on the specs right now.
Anything else? Thanks, Brian. Do you need a motion to accept that report, or is that just an information item?
Oh, as an action item. If we could at least accept it is an action item, so if we could at least accept the report, but we're not actually approving the budget.
Right.
Once again, that'll be happening in May.
Someone want to give me a motion to accept the report?
Move to accept the report.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Items for future board meetings. I've just got one, Joe, and that's maybe have a standing item regarding the search for the CEO that so we can discuss that. I mean, just some kind of updates or just to keep the board apprised of what's going on.
We'll include that.
Thank you. Anything else? Any board member comments? Motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Motion is second. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to see. Come by and has a minute.
Sure.
Any days better than